Thank you for tuning in to this presentation about Islam. I am Rudwan Quwatli, the founder of Love God Institute. And let me start by telling you that Islam is not a monolithic religion. Rather, it is versatile. The two main groups within Islam are the Shia, which makes about 10%, and the Sunni, which makes about 90%. Within each group, there are sects and cults. This presentation is intended to familiarize you with mainstream Sunni Islam. Let me start by sharing with you the definition of Islam. Islam can be best defined as Abrahamic, ethical, monotheistic religion. Starting off with Abrahamic. Abraham is intimately linked with Islam. Actually, there are more than 70 Quranic references to Abraham, who is presented as a Muslim. Say what, a Muslim? Yes, he is presented as a Muslim in the general sense, in the sense that he surrendered to God. Quran 1:131 tells us, his Lord said to him, surrender. He replied, I surrendered to the Lord of all. God in the Quran asked a rhetorical question. We find that in Quran 4:125. Who could be better in religion than one who submits his face to God, who is good, and follows the tradition of Abraham, the dear beloved friend of God? The tradition of Abraham is submission to God and shunning false gods. Actually, in God's redemptive plan, He commissioned messengers to people of different tribes and nations, proclaiming, worship God and shun false gods. We find that in Quran 16:36. In the final stage of God's redemptive plan, He commissioned Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a mercy to the world. You find that in Quran 20:107. Through the advent of Muhammad, who is a direct descendant of Abraham, may the peace of God be upon them both, God fulfilled His promise to Abraham to bless all the nations through his descendants. This is the blessing of monotheism. As you know, monotheism means to believe in and worship one God. But the definition of Islam is Abrahamic ethical monotheism. Believing in God, worshipping God, surrendering to God are what ethically and morally is due to God alone. For others, contributed neither to the creation, provision, nor salvation of human beings. But believing in God was never intended to be a matter of mentally accepting a proposition. Rather, it's intended to be a state of mind that makes a believer ready, willing, and wanting to reflect corresponding human versions of God's moral character. God is the merciful and the mercy giver. The one who worships God must be an agent of mercy. During the farewell pilgrimage that brought the largest assembly of believers during the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he posed the following rhetorical question. He said, should I tell you who the believer is? I can imagine the question fell on the ears of the multitudes that came to perform pilgrimage with the Prophet with a great sense of surprise. After all, they considered themselves, and rightly so, the believers. They were the ones who converted from paganism to monotheism. The Prophet, peace be upon him, gave them a very unconventional but practical answer. He said the believer is the one that people here includes Muslims and non-Muslims, trust him. Him here is generic, him or her, with their wealth and with their lives. See, the Prophet, peace be upon him, in this statement distilled from all what a Muslim is to believe in. To believe in God, to believe in the angels, to believe in the books, to believe in the prophets, to believe in the destiny, to believe in resurrection and judgment. He distilled from all of that the essence to make this person a person of scrupulous behavior, a moral character, that others trust this individual with their wealth and with their lives. That means Madoff does not qualify. That means the underwear bomber does not qualify. Believing in God is intended to bring the best out of the believer. But who is God? Before I embark on this very important topic, it's prudent to stress that no one can fully comprehend God. You will find this truth in Quran 20:110. Nevertheless, God communicates to us what we need to know about Him. He is the supreme, merciful, mercy-giver being, perfect in power, wisdom, and goodness. Before the existence of space and time, and before anything ever was, God always has been. He is unoriginated, uncaused, and not restricted by any physical limitations. He does not acquire His existence from any source, nor depends on anything to sustain His existence. Rather, He is the ever-living, sustaining God who neither dies nor sleeps. This is the God of the Quran. And the Quran tells us Muslims to say to the people of the book, to the Jews and to the Christians, our God and your God is one. It could be translated as our God and your God is the same. You find that in Quran 29:46. That does not mean we do not acknowledge that there are theological differences in understanding God, but the truth remains that our God and your God is the same. I love what Nehemiah 9:6 says. You alone are the Lord. You made the skies and the heavens and all the stars. You made the earth and the seas and everything in them. You preserve and give life to everything, and all the angels of heaven worship you. I worship Him too. That does not mean I am an angel, but it means I am a Muslim. God created us for the great, gratifying, and glorious purpose of worshiping Him. The most important element of worship is loving the Creator. Love and worship are intimately related. But loving God is nowhere mandated in the Quran, because it is presupposed of those who become to know God. Therefore, knowing God is a Quranic mandate. Worship is the internal and the external submission to God, proceeding out of love, glorification, and adoration. This internal and external submission is manifested in doing righteous deeds. There are more than 50 Quranic references praising and talking about those who believe and do righteous deeds. The beautiful tapestry of righteous deeds includes ceremonial acts of worship, non-ceremonial acts of worship, attitudes of faith, and deeds of mercy unto others. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. I love to hear from you, and thank you for tuning in.